Walter sat down with his coffee at 6:40 every morning for 11 years. He thought he was resting. His body thought the day was already over. The first 30 minutes after you wake up runs one of the most powerful chemical events of your entire day. And for Walter, sitting through it was quietly working against him without him ever knowing it. That's the first of 7 habits I keep seeing work against people after 60, ranked by what they actually cost you. And the last one changed how I run my own mornings. I've spent more than 20 years in geriatric and emergency medicine, and Walter's story isn't rare. It's close to the rule. I've sat with thousands of patients in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and I keep seeing the same quiet mistakes made by people who did absolutely nothing wrong. They just were never told. So tonight I'm ranking 7 of those habits for you, not by how common they are, but by how much they're actually costing you. A few of these will surprise you. One of them, I'd bet almost nobody watching has ever heard connected to their health at all. Before we get into the list, here's why this matters more than it might sound. The National Institute on Aging is blunt about this. Meaningful physical and cognitive improvement is possible at almost any age, including, as you'll see in a few minutes, in people already in their 90s. Not 60, not 70, 90s. That's the part I want you to sit with before we even start. This has never been a young person's game. It is not too late. Let's start with the one almost nobody thinks about, because it doesn't feel like a health decision at all. Drinking less water because you don't feel thirsty. This one is dangerous specifically because it's invisible. You won't feel it happening. As we age, the hypothalamus, the control center that tells your brain, drink now, gradually gets less sensitive to that signal. Think of it like a smoke detector with an old battery. It's still there. It's just not going off when it should. That means you can be genuinely dehydrated and feel completely fine, which is exactly backwards from how the warning system is supposed to work. Researchers at UCLA's School of Nursing, led by Dr. Janet Mentes, found that up to 40% of community-dwelling older adults are chronically underhydrated. Not occasionally, chronically. And dehydration isn't a minor discomfort in this age group. It's one of the leading drivers of preventable emergency room visits in adults over 65, closely tied to urinary tract infections, which are themselves one of the most common causes of sudden confusion and hospitalization in older adults. It also raises kidney stone risk and can push common medications to dangerous concentrations in your blood, because so many drugs depend on adequate hydration to clear properly. Here's the reassuring part. This is one of the easiest things on this entire list to fix, because you don't have to trust your thirst at all. You just have to trust a number. Aim for 6 to 8 cups a day, spread through the day rather than gulped at once. Keep a water bottle where you can see it, and pair it with naturally hydrating foods like cucumber, watermelon, and leafy greens. If you're on blood pressure medication, mention this to your doctor. Hydration and certain BP drugs interact, and that's a 2-minute conversation worth having. Now here's the one I promised you. The habit almost every retired person in this country does automatically, the one Walter didn't know was working against him. Sitting down within the first 30 minutes of waking up. I know that sounds impossibly small. Stay with me, because the mechanism here genuinely surprised me the first time I read the research closely. Your body has what's called a cortisol awakening response. In the first 30 to 45 minutes after you open your eyes, cortisol, your main alertness hormone, surges 50 to 100% above its baseline. This isn't the stress hormone cortisol you've heard bad things about. In this specific window, it's anti-inflammatory. It's your body's ignition sequence, priming your cardiovascular system, your brain, and your joints for the day ahead. Think of it as your body switching from standby power to full power, but only if something asks it to. When you sit down immediately, coffee, chair, the news, you're telling your body the day's physical demands are already finished. The cortisol still surges. It just circulates with nowhere useful to go. And chronically wasted cortisol is linked to more visceral fat, faster bone density loss, and a weaker immune response over time. This is where I want to correct something, because the original research I'd seen cited on this topic for years turned out to be shakier than it looked. What actually holds up is a 2017 study out of Colombia, published in the Annals of Internal Medicine, that tracked nearly 8,000 American adults over 45 for several years. It wasn't really about the morning specifically. It was about how sitting accumulates. People who broke up their sitting into stretches under 30 minutes had meaningfully lower mortality risk than people with the same total sitting time taken in long, unbroken blocks of an hour or more. Same total sitting. Nearly double the risk, just from how it was distributed. The first 30 minutes of your day is simply the easiest block to protect, because it's the one block that's entirely up to you before the day gets away from you. I had a patient, I'll call him Walter, 76, a retired school teacher outside Pittsburgh. Same routine for over a decade. Wake up, coffee, recliner, the news, for close to an hour before he did anything else. His joints ached for the first 2 hours of every day. He was foggy until early afternoon. His labs showed borderline glucose and low energy markers for his age. We changed exactly one thing. For 21 days, Walter took a 10-minute walk outside within 15 minutes of waking, ahead of the coffee and the recliner entirely. Then he went on with the rest of his day however he wanted. 3 weeks in, he called my office and told me it felt like somebody had flipped a switch back on inside him. His morning stiffness had dropped. His energy held through the afternoon. His fasting glucose had come down. Stepping outside adds a second layer. Morning light triggers a serotonin release that pairs with the cortisol surge to help set your circadian rhythm for the entire day, which in turn supports deeper sleep that night. 10 minutes. That's the whole ask. A slow walk, light stretching, even standing at a bright window while you do your first stretches counts. This is not about exercise. It's about not wasting a chemical window your body opens for you for free every single morning, whether you use it or not. Habit 3. And this one costs people their independence more than almost anything else on this list. Avoiding resistance training because your joints hurt. I understand the logic. Knees ache, hips ache, so you protect them by resting. It sounds sensible. It is almost exactly backwards. Muscle and joint are partners. When muscle weakens, the joint absorbs more force, not less, because there's less muscle around it to share the load. Skipping resistance training doesn't protect your joints. It slowly removes their support system. This is sarcopenia, the medical term for age-related muscle loss. After 70, without resistance training, you can lose up to 3% of your muscle a year. By 80, many sedentary adults have lost 30 to 40% of what they had at 50. Here's the number that should get your attention. The National Institute on Aging says about 30% of adults over 70 already struggle to walk, rise from a chair, or climb stairs without help. 3 in 10, not a distant risk. If you're over 70, it may already be starting quietly. Here's the belief I most want to break tonight. People assume frailty is just what getting old feels like. It isn't. In one of the most striking studies in all of geriatric medicine, researchers at Tufts University's Nutrition Center on Aging put 10 nursing home residents, average age 90, the oldest 96, through 8 weeks of high-intensity resistance training. Average strength increase, 174%. Some of them regained the ability to rise from a chair without their arms for the first time in years. Frailty was reversible in people in their 90s. It is not a fixed destination. It's a direction. And direction can change at any age. Want to know where you actually stand right now without waiting for a study? Try this. Sit in a sturdy chair, arms crossed over your chest, and count how many full stand and sit repetitions you can do in 30 seconds. This is the same chair stand test used in fall risk screening. The CDC's STEADY program uses it as a baseline check. You don't need a perfect score. You need your own number, so you can watch it move. I had a patient, Joyce, 83, a retired school secretary outside Kansas City, who told me her body was simply falling apart and there was nothing to be done. She'd stopped walking to her mailbox. We started her on seated resistance exercises with light bands, twice a week, 20 minutes a session. Nothing dramatic. 4 months later, she was walking a mile most mornings. One detail matters here. Eat a protein-rich meal within 30 minutes of training. That window is when your muscle is most receptive to rebuilding. There's a name for why timing matters more now than it did at 40. Anabolic resistance. Your muscle simply answers protein signals less readily than it used to. Which means timing isn't a nice to have anymore. It's the difference between a workout that builds something and one that doesn't. Habit 4. Sleeping more than 9 hours a night, or leaning on over-the-counter sleep aids to get there. I know this one sounds backwards. Sleep is supposed to be protective. It generally is. But long sleep in older adults is often a symptom of poor quality sleep, not a sign of restorative rest. Your brain has an actual cleaning system called the glymphatic system that flushes metabolic waste, including the amyloid protein linked to Alzheimer's, out of brain tissue overnight. It runs almost entirely during deep sleep, concentrated in the first 6 or 7 hours. 10 hours in bed with fragmented, shallow sleep can mean fewer hours of that cleaning cycle than a solid 7. Not more. The sleep aid piece concerns me more. Most over-the-counter sleep aids use an antihistamine called diphenhydramine, the same ingredient in Benadryl. A landmark study out of the University of Washington, published in JAMA Internal Medicine, followed nearly 3,500 adults, 65 and older, for an average of 7 years. People who used a strong anticholinergic, that class of drug, for the equivalent of 3 years or more, had a 54% higher risk of developing dementia compared to those who used it for 3 months or less. The mechanism makes sense. These drugs block acetylcholine, a chemical your brain already produces less of as you age. So blocking it further is what researchers called a double hit. One honest caveat: that was an observational study, not proof of cause. But here's what to do with it. Don't stop anything tonight. Don't ever stop a medication on your own. Just take one question to your doctor. Is anything on my list an anticholinergic? 6 words. That's the whole ask, and it costs you nothing to raise it. I had a patient, Barbara, 78, a retired accountant in Sacramento, sleeping 10 hours a night on a nightly sleep aid and still waking up exhausted. Her cognitive testing had been quietly sliding for 2 years. We worked with her doctor to taper the medication, set a strict 7-hour sleep window, and added magnesium glycinate before bed. 4 months later, she told me the mental fog that had followed her around for 2 years was finally beginning to clear. If sleep is a real struggle for you, start here. Same sleep and wake time every day. A room around 65 to 67 degrees Fahrenheit. No screens for the hour before bed. 200 to 400 milligrams of magnesium glycinate works well for many people without the next day grogginess sleep aids can leave behind. Habit 5. Eating 3 large meals a day. This is the one people are most surprised to see on this list, because it's what your mother taught you. After 65, gastric acid production drops by roughly 40%, and digestive enzyme output slows with it. Your gut's ability to process a large volume of food in one sitting genuinely diminishes. Picture your digestive system after 70 as a smaller capacity engine. The fuel requirement hasn't actually dropped, but it needs to arrive in smaller loads, spaced further apart, or it just sits there unprocessed instead of getting burned for energy. There's a second piece that makes meal size matter even more. Anabolic resistance, the same process I mentioned with resistance training. Muscle, in older adults, needs a bigger, more concentrated hit of protein to trigger rebuilding than it did at 40. Researchers estimate roughly 25 to 30 grams of high-quality protein per meal to reliably cross that threshold. Spread thin across 3 plates, or crammed into one enormous dinner. That threshold often just isn't met, Spread across 4 or 5 smaller meals it usually is. I had a patient. Dennis, 74, a retired plant worker outside Buffalo who showed up drained and uncomfortably full after nearly every meal, certain something was actually wrong with him. His pattern was a tiny breakfast and one enormous dinner, nearly the worst distribution for an aging gut. We rebuilt his day around 5 smaller meals, each with a real protein source and a bit of healthy fat, like olive oil, which helps absorb fat-soluble vitamins your bones and immune system need. Within 2 months, he said his energy felt a decade younger. Practical version: eat roughly every 3 to 4 hours and don't let any single meal skip the protein. 2 more, and I'll move quickly. Smaller levers, but skip them and you're leaving easy wins on the table. Habit 6. Long, hot daily showers. After 65, your skin makes less natural oil, and the barrier that holds moisture in gets thinner. Hot water strips what's left of it. That's the dry skin no lotion seems to fix. Here's what worries me more, though. Hot water opens your blood vessels fast, and your blood pressure can drop just as fast behind it. Ever feel a little dizzy stepping out of a hot shower? That's not nothing. If it's happened more than once, mention it to your doctor before your next shower, not after a fall. The bathroom is already the most common room in the house for falls after 65. Fix warm, not hot, 8 minutes or less. Moisturize while skin is still damp. Small change, real payoff. Habit 7. Relying only on stronger reading glasses and never training the eyes underneath them. Presbyopia, age-related near vision loss, comes partly from tiny muscles around your eye's lens stiffening over time. Muscles, even small ones, respond to use, so use them. Daily near-far focus practice, plus enough lutein and zinc in your diet, won't replace your glasses. It can slow how fast you need the next stronger pair. And better lighting at home does more for fall prevention after dark than most people ever think to check. So here's the pattern underneath all 7, because I don't want you walking away with 7 disconnected facts. Your body didn't betray you. It just changed the rules somewhere. After 60 or 70, and nobody sent you the update. That's it. That's the whole pattern. Not broken. Running on outdated instructions. None of this is about becoming a different person. It's about catching where the old instructions stop matching the machine you're actually running now. If you only act on one thing tonight, make it this: the 30 minutes after you wake up tomorrow. Don't sit down first. Walk to the end of your driveway and back, or just stand at a window with some light on your face for 10 minutes. Notice how the rest of your morning feels. That's it. That's the whole test. And one more thing worth knowing, especially if you're on Medicare. Your annual wellness visit is completely free, no copay, no deductible. And most people never book it. At that visit, ask specifically about your hydration, a fall risk check, and whether your current medications include anything on the anticholinergic list we talked about tonight. That's a 5-minute conversation that costs you nothing and could change quite a bit. I've watched patients in their 80s reverse things a previous doctor told them were permanent. I've watched people who couldn't walk to their own mailbox become daily walkers within months. Not from a medication. Not from a miracle. From accurate information, used consistently, starting from wherever they actually were. So don't try to fix all 7 of these this week. Pick one, the one that sounded most like you, and give it 7 days. That's all. And if this reached someone you love at exactly the right moment, send it to them tonight. Sometimes that's the whole intervention. Take care of yourselves.